Our guest today is Joanne Barnes, and Joanne is manager of the Minden Food Bank, and we thank her for joining us today. It's really lovely to see you, Joanne. How are things?
Well, things continue to be busy.
Yeah.
We have 300 plus families registered. That isn't a true accounting, because although that's the total that are registered, that's not how many are actually coming. Our numbers visiting the food bank are about the same as other years. It's just that it's different people. A lot of our regular people missed several months because they got funds from the government, but we picked up new people to replace those. And then it was in about October where those old regulars started to come back. But our numbers average about the same as last year.
Now, have you seen a change in the numbers over the years? Like, has it grown, or has it stayed about the same over the last decade, say?
I think we sort of have stayed about the same. In the winter, we average about 200 families a month coming in. The difference is now the look of desperation on faces. When they come to the door, even though we're operating in lockdown, no clients are allowed in the food center, but we put their food out. The desperation and helplessness is on everyone's face. And it makes our job so much harder because everybody's got a story to tell and we don't have the answers, you know. The cost of groceries is so high here that they can't afford to buy food. The rents have gone crazy. They can't afford to keep the rent paid up, and the cost of fuel, you know, so everyone is becoming so desperate now.
And this desperation that you see is only the visible part. There's probably a good deal of hidden needs out there that you become aware of as well.
Yes, that's very true. In cities, you see homeless people on the city streets. Here in Minden, you don't see them, but we have a huge population living in tents.
In tents?
And it's tents. And it is so cold here, I don't know how they survive.
My goodness.
We need to start offering warming centers for these people. I haven't heard, other than they can go in the library, but that doesn't help overnight. So that's something that we need to get people actively working on.
Well, this is a most difficult time. I'm sure most people know that by the end of March, you'll be hanging up your hat at the Minden Food Bank. How many years have you been with the food bank now?
I think it's 18.
Wow.
I started off, I was put onto the board of directors as a representative of my church. And after a couple of meetings, I realized that if I was going to make informed suggestions, that I needed to learn about the day-to-day operation. So there I started doing that, and I did it for 10 months, and I privately kept notes on observations. And at the end of 10 months, I wrote a report and asked to meet with the executive. And I showed them what I had seen, and it shocked them. There were no paper trails, no systems in place. Cash donations didn't always stay with the food bank. Sometimes it went in pockets. A lot of things like that. And misuse of things. So I said, well, make some calls and see if I'm wrong. and they found out I wasn't wrong. And within a month, I was the new manager.
Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, that's how it started.
Now,
And sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask, over this period of time, as well as all those we'll call them management changes, there have been physical changes at the Minden Food Bank as well. Some significant improvements along the way.
Yes, when I started, we were operating out of the old IGA building, which is now a parking lot. And as we continued to grow, we shifted our locations. In 2014, we had partnered with the Masons. They had to do some building on their lodge. It was falling apart. So we joined together and created this food center that we're in now at 24 Newcastle. So we started operating here on the 1st of November in 2014. So we went from a tiny hole in the wall to this huge facility, which we're outgrowing.
I can imagine it. And inside, you made a number of changes. You actually got some equipment to help the volunteers move food around. You're dealing with a lot of food in that facility.
We are. We became a food center now because we have an operating food bank. We have a hub or warehouse, and we have a community kitchen upstairs, all of which we furnished with donations from the community. We have a very charitable community here. So we have this wonderful new facility, but our work continues to grow as well. We offer more and more programs to help people in new ways. We're not just a food bank. One of the programs, we offer the loan of medical equipment like walkers and wheelchairs, bath seats, because we found a lot of people couldn't afford to rent them. So we had a couple on hand, and it started out, a gentleman had to have chemo and needed a walker, and they couldn't afford it. And I said, well, I've got one here. Why don't I loan it to you? So that's how it started. They used it for the better part of a year, and then they brought it back. So word got out, and then people started donating these pieces of equipment when their family was finished with them. So we have quite a variety and a stock, and we're loaning them out quite regularly.
So the food bank is, as you say, more than just a food bank. It's really a resource center for people in need in a variety of ways. And is that a big change in the food bank over the years?
Yes, early on it was strictly giving food out. When I first started, that's what we did. And it was on a much smaller scale. I think our budget back there was well under 10,000, and now it's well over 100,000.
Wow.
So that's one of the big changes. We've made some good contacts. I'm able to provide all of the food banks in Haliburton with meat on a monthly basis. That's different than most food banks. Here in Minden, we offer perishable as well as non-perishable items. And that includes a bag of meat, assorted meats, whatever we have. We offer milk, eggs, cheese, margarine, all kinds of dairy. And often when camps close, they'll donate whatever food products they have left over, And because we have both a walk-in cooler and a walk-in freezer, we can accommodate so much more. And that's sort of unique to most food banks.
You were talking about providing the other food banks in the county with meat. It appears in certainly the last decade, more and more communication is taking place between the four food banks. There's a lot of information being shared with each other to make sure that the entire county is looked after as best it can.
Yes, and that even has improved during COVID. The Food Banks Canada, they offered emergency hampers. I think I got 15 pallets.
Wow.
Because I have the capacity to store it, I was able to do that. And a pallet had about 60 or 65 emergency hampers on it. So that was just what we got here. I know Wilberforce, they got a number of pallets as well, and we used them to supplement the foods that we gave out. So not this winter, but the winter before, when we did the Christmas hampers, we included one of these emergency boxes, and it had about a week's worth of groceries. So we've been able to add that to what we're able to give out. So that was a huge boost to everyone.
Well, it's obvious that the need is universal across the county, and
Yes.
as you mentioned, the numbers are about the same as last year. Although more different people are coming into the food bank, and the emotional side of it must be really difficult on all of your volunteers and people as well.
Well, that's very true. At the start of COVID, in January and February, we had the volunteers that weren't snowbirds that were working. And then when we got the information about COVID and we had to do things differently, I met with the volunteers and I said, this is going to be a group decision. Do you want and feel comfortable with allowing our volunteers coming back from the southern states, coming back to the food bank? Do you feel comfortable with that? I said, this will be a group decision, and I'll leave it with you. So when I went back out and talked to them, they voted to not accept anybody else. We had a group of, I believe it was 8 volunteers, plus Kim and myself. And they felt safer by staying with that tight unit and not allowing any new people in. So the 10 of us operated the food center for 2 years.
Wow.
So it was a bigger commitment for us because you had to come in twice a week for a couple hours. But they felt secure in staying with that small group of people. So that's how we've been working with 10 volunteers as opposed to a list of 40 or 45.
You mentioned the community support a short while ago, and I think it's obvious that the Minden Food Bank has been really successful in other relationships as well, support from businesses and organizations that no doubt have helped the organization over these past 2 years.
Well, last year, Canoe FM, they called me and asked me a bunch of questions. They were talking about making a considerable donation to all Haliburton food banks. Because of our size and capabilities to store large amounts of food, they were asking me questions. If we gave the money to you and it's designed to help all the food banks, how would you share with the other food banks? And I said, well, it would be equitable. It would be shared by population. So for each food bank, we would look at the number of people they serve, and we would break it down percentage-wise so that everybody got their fair share. So I guess my integrity goes before me, because they thought it was safe that they made that donation here, and I was put in as the purchaser of everything for all the food banks. It was an honor for me, but it was also a huge undertaking to purchase enough product for all of the county. We broke it into three big shops, and it worked well. I wouldn't want to do it again because, well, we had to arrange transportation. The problem was the trucks that were coming here were always shortchanging the facilities here. So we couldn't get the product, and I was advised to seek out a new wholesaler. So that meant I had to go out of the county, and I went to Lindsay. They guaranteed they would get everything if I gave them enough time. So it started out, I think we had 6 pickup trucks go to Lindsay to pick up product. And Bonnie Rowe had created a group of people that were willing to pick up stuff with trucks. So she offered 6 trucks. The one thing I wasn't aware of that was these drivers, most of them were 80-ish. So when they all arrived at the food bank for unloading, it kind of, a lot of it fell on me and Kim. And both of us are still paying the consequences for it. And the doctor said to me, well, why would you do that? And I said, well, what was I supposed to do? Let the 80-year-olds do it? So that was a learning curve early on. But it all worked out. We're still here, even though we ache a little.
Over the span of time that you've been with the Minden Food Bank, I'm sure you've got enough stories that could fill a book by the time you're all done. Have you given any thought to what you might do with your available time when the end of March comes about and you leave the Minden Food Bank?
Well, I have 2 daughters and an adopted daughter. She's my daughter's sister-in-law. And between the 3 girls, we have 6 grandchildren. They range from 3 months to 8 years. So that is going to consume the bulk of my free time. I want to have the freedom to be able to go from one house to the other and spend time with these wonderful little people. So that's one of the big things I want to do. I've already signed up online for a couple of courses, and that was to prevent me from backing down with my decision to retire. I knew it was time for me to step aside and let somebody younger take on the leadership role. I'm mentally and physically tired, and I want time to spend with my grandkids. So I made the decision in the summer, and it took me till October to actually let the board know. They asked if I would consider making it longer, and I said, well, no. 10 years ago, I suggested we get busy on succession planning because I wouldn't be here forever. And 10 years later, there was nothing done. So as of October, you have 5 months to figure it out. So I couldn't leave earlier because my heart wouldn't allow me to do that, because the Christmas hampers are so important to so many families that I knew I had to stay and do that, which we did, and it was very successful. And then I have 3 months for them to get somebody in here that I can start to train a little bit on, how to do things. One of the directors told me that they would have to get 4 people to do my job. So I have been working at home on it, and I've divided my position into 4. The daily operation, they almost need somebody to look after inventory control and purchasing. Somebody that is willing to do public speaking and educating the community on where we're at and where we want to go, and to accept donations. And then you have the daily operations. So there's the job. And then in addition to that, I have been responsible for the Christmas hampers. So I'm working on some guidelines for each of those, and whoever they get won't be overwhelmed with the total thing. They can pick and choose what parts they're able to do.
Well, it sounds like you certainly planned the exit with some care, and I'm sure that's appreciated by the board to know that it's well defined, and they'll be able to find someone and some other support people to help along the way. But I also know, Joanne, that I think you decided that you were going to stay involved with Fuel for Warmth. Is that correct?
Yes, that is. I'm not ready to let that go as well. It's a big part of my heart, and it's such an important need here, to see people having to have their children stay in their snowsuits from Friday till Monday when they're at school again. That was an eye-opener. And to learn about seniors that were staying in their bed with all the blankets they owned and their pet, just trying to stay warm. Those were the 2 reasons that the program has evolved to what it is. I've had a wonderful assist from you and all your friends who have been our major fundraiser with the Shindig. Fuel for Warmth wouldn't be where it is without you.
Well, that's very kind.
For that, I thank you.
Well, I know that all the committee that's been involved with the Shindig, many of whom have been involved right from the beginning, and our last Shindig was the 8th annual event.
Yes.
And they're just a marvelous group of Highlanders who have a care for the community and know that there's a huge need for making sure people don't go cold during our winter months. So I think you can be assured that they were all delighted to lend a hand and help with the effort that you've put into it. It's been great.
Well, it certainly has grown from the early days, The very first Shindig, I remember coming up to accept the check, and I could hardly maintain my composure because I was so overwhelmed to see how many people supported an idea. And each year it gets bigger and better, and that's so much your part. I've always, when I speak about Fuel for Warmth, I say there's the operational side, and then there's the fundraising and promotion. And I said, and that is under your leadership. and I'm on the operation side. So to have those two sides work together is just amazing.
Well, I think the end result is that people in the Highlands care. And whether it's the food bank or Fuel for Warmth and so many other endeavors in Haliburton County, it is a community that when there's a need, they come forth and they give so generously to so many organizations that are in need. It's a good feeling, isn't it?
It is. And if you're going to have problems, this is where you want to be. I've never experienced the kind of support and sharing that exists here. And it just, you step back and you look at the amount of money, you know, the money that was given to Fuel for Warmth, the money that went to the heat bank, the money from the radiothon. Like, all these dollars are coming out of this community in a very tight frame, you know, of time. So we have the two extremes. We have the very poor and the very wealthy. But a large part of those wealthy people have a very generous heart.
They do indeed. They do indeed.
Yeah.
Joanne, thanks for taking time with us today. We did want to stop and say thank you to you as the manager of the Minden Food Bank and Fuel for Warmth. And we wish you all the very best as you approach that date that you have firmly fixed in front of you.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for joining us today, Joanne. Lovely to chat with you. You take care.
Good to see you again, Mike. Thanks.
Bye for now.
Bye.